There seems to be a general consensus throughout the internet that Pearl has borderline personality disorder. And I also think she does. Like, she checks some boxes. But what if it's not? What if there's something else there?
I'm worried there may be something real wrong with me, Mitzi.
I'm Micah, a licensed therapist, and here we like to talk about horror. First, I'm going to go over the 2 movies that have been released in this planned trilogy. We're going to talk about Maxine a little bit, because she's the main character in X, sort of. Then we're going to talk about Pearl, a very interesting and complex character who is going to take the center stage of this video.
No, I'm a star! Please, I'm a
X follows a group of people making a porno movie. You know from the beginning that there was a massacre. This just starts with the police investigating. And when this movie started, my first observation was that I felt like I could kind of smell what was going on there. You could tell it was like hot and humid. And if you're familiar with any southern weather, it's not a good time. Yuck. I'm not going to go into every single detail of this movie. They're making a porno. They do porn stuff. I love the late 70s, early 80s vibe of this one. They start out riding in a van. They're going to their filming location. And this time, it was a relatively new thing, I think, for someone who is like an independent director to film a porno movie. I don't know. They thought they were going to make it like really big with it. So they show up to this farm and they meet Howard, who is the landlord of the farm. They show up at Howard's farm to rent their cabin. And Howard isn't very friendly. He realizes that they're up to something and is kind of like, hey, stay away from my wife. What is up with this dude? Like, is he gonna kill everybody? When Maxine is kind of hanging out, she's not filming in this moment. Her scene is going to be the following day. She walks out and decides to go for a swim in a pond. And this swim was very scary. Like, genuinely not a whole lot scares me in real life. But I got a real issue with being in natural bodies of water and thinking that there is something else in there with me. No, not cool. I can't avoid the fact that she has just like the most amazing blue eyeshadow ever. This eyeshadow does not budge. It's like she swims in it, she sleeps in it, she makes movies in it. It just never budges. So she's swimming in this pond and hanging out, and it's kind of an overhead shot of her swimming when she starts to swim back. So she's swimming in the pond, enjoying herself, whatever, skinny dipping. So as she swims back to the dock, you can see that an alligator is just slowly tracking her. I was like, it's gonna get you. But she gets out, gets on the dock right before it can get her. Has no idea. I guess that's the part that messed me up so much, was like she had no idea that there was an alligator that was tailing her and was going to eat her. So then Maxine continues to wander around the farm property while this is going on and ends up wandering into the house of the property owners. Why would you do that? And I literally wrote in my notes, what the fuck is she doing going into their house? So there's this awkward exchange with Pearl, who we meet in this point. Pearl is a elderly lady. I think she was like in her 80s at this point, maybe. I'm sure they mention it, but I don't remember. So meets with Pearl, very awkward exchange. They sit and drink lemonade, awkwardly talk across the table, and then Maxine leaves. I'm looking forward to the third one in this trilogy, Maxine, because I want to know more about this character, because we only very, very lightly touch on this character in X. We learn later, kind of in passing, that she is a runaway and that she is running from the religion that she was brought up in, that her father is a pastor. Maxine states to herself while she's getting ready, will not accept a life I do not deserve. So that's interesting. So some stuff happens. There's some drama. There's a few things. I mean, they're just making a porno. So it's part of the character development. It's kind of part of it. So Maxine goes to film her scene in the movie in the barn. And while this is going on, we notice that Pearl has snuck up to the window and is watching it being filmed. You can tell that it is impacting her significantly. Pearl's a creep. Let me tell you, man. She's like digging it and kind of living vicariously through Maxine, and imagines herself in that moment filming that movie. It's a little weird. That's okay. The guy who's recording everything ends up deciding he's going to leave because his girlfriend, who is helping with the production, decides she's going to be in the porno movie. And he's like, okay, all right. Gets upset, leaves, tries to leave. Pearl stops him. So in my notes, I wrote the word red because I forgot to write about the rest of what was going on. But when the camera guy starts to leave, he is stopped by Pearl, who attempts to seduce him. That doesn't work out very well. So she kills him very violently. Blood everywhere. And that's why I wrote red, because everything was red. It's like on the headlights of the van, and so it just creates this atmosphere of just everything's blah. So eventually the guy who seems to be in charge of everything with the porno movie wanders out trying to figure out where the heck dude is. I don't remember, but he just like wanders out in his underwear out to the barn barefoot. Never been on a farm before, dude. And you can tell, and I mean, he should have worn some shoes. So he steps on a fucking nail, and it is atrocious. Now you're in the barn in your underwear with a big hole in your foot, and you're getting an infection because you didn't put shoes on. And you're pretty much naked. It's not really a problem for long, though. Pearl takes care of things. At this point, Pearl has just like unleashed her madness and mayhem on this group, which is really interesting to me because you don't see a lot of like older ladies in this role. You might see them as like, I don't know, a scary, extra creepy character or something. Strong old lady. So there's a scene where Maxine is sleeping and Pearl crawls into bed with her and is touching her, and it's really icky. Poor Maxine. Other people die. Everybody ends up getting killed pretty much except Maxine. I'm just going to go ahead and spoil all of that. Everybody dies in violent ways. And we have an elderly sex scene that we didn't ask for, that I don't know if anybody asked for. I guess somebody asked for it. But poor Maxine is under the bed while Howard and Pearl are getting it on top of the bed. This whole sex scene is a big thing because Howard is apparently afraid to have sex because he's afraid he's going to have a heart attack. And Pearl is like, nah, you have to have sex with me, because she feels like not valued or special or whatever, and she's going around killing everybody because of it. So what happens? Howard does have a heart attack. So Maxine's the only one that's left. She's trying to get out of there, trying to escape the situation. I don't know. I can't remember if she knows if she's like the only one alive or not. And there's some shotgun blowing away Jenna Ortega's face, which is like... Pearl and Maxine end up having a standoff in the front hallway of the house. And it reveals that they have some similarities. And Pearl says some things about, like, I used to be just like you, and blah, 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 blah. Very, like, the similarities between Pearl and Maxine are interesting. I'm kind of wondering if there's going to be, like, further connection there moving forward. But Pearl pretty much says, you're like me. Life's going to suck. This is what happened to me. And Maxine is like, nah, I will not accept a life I don't deserve. She ends up like saying that again. So they end up in a standoff. Pearl fires a shotgun at Maxine and misses, and the shotgun just like throws her back. Dang, what? So it throws her back. Maxine's like, all right, well, I'm getting out of here. Maxine goes to escape, runs past Pearl, gets in the van, and Maxine escapes. Eyeshadow doesn't budge. And that's X. That's the first movie. Of course, there's some more things in there. I think it's worth watching. I found it entertaining. So after I watched this, I was like, fuck yeah, now I'm going to watch Pearl. Pearl is the story of the old lady when she was younger. Completely different movie. And now on to our main star of this video. Pearl's story in the second movie takes place in 1918 during, I think it was the Spanish flu, but during a pandemic that kind of mirrors what we all just went through. So you see some people in masks and things like that. Pearl is a young woman living a relatively isolated life on her family's farm. If you see X first, you know that the farm that they are living on is the farm where the whole movie X takes place, just years and years before. Pearl's parents are German immigrants. Her mom is very stern, authoritative, and seems to be kind of controlling. And her father is disabled. I think it says what happens, but I don't know. But he's pretty much comatose and just in a wheelchair. And Pearl has to take care of him. Pearl actually is married. She's not single at this point, even though she is living as a single woman on this farm, because she married Howard. Yes, Howard stuck with her all these years. You'll see why that's like, dude, Howard, what the fuck? Pearl married Howard to try to escape her humble beginnings because Howard's family has some money. But then Howard was like, I'm not doing that. I'm going and joining the military. And he joins the military and goes to fight in, I guess it's one of the world wars. So Pearl is married but left with her parents. So the thing about Pearl is that she has this intense fantasy of becoming famous. She thinks very highly of herself at periods of time, but not always. She performs little shows to the farm animals, except for the interrupting goose, who Pearl takes care of. This part shows the first signs of the darker side of Pearl. She kills the goose, feeds it to her gator friend. I imagine that the alligator that almost got Maxine is a descendant of this alligator, but I don't know. I don't know how long they live. I want a gator friend. I'm jealous, but I can't be killing things. Pearl ends up sneaking off to go and watch a movie when she goes to pick up her father's medicine. It's morphine. She drinks it and then goes to the movie. The movie that she's watching seems like something that would be present in this specific era, except it starts to get really, really gruesome, and that's like not something that would have been shown in movies at that time. So that indicates that Pearl might be imagining these scenes, makes things a little more sinister, that she's having some like really dark, violent fantasies. She meets a projectionist who shows her old school porn, which is kind of creepy, but okay. He gives her a piece of the film as a souvenir, and she is on cloud nine. So she's riding her bike home, and she ends up like losing the little piece of film. It flies away in the wind, so she goes and looks for it in the cornfield and happens upon a scarecrow. She proceeds to have a strange interaction with the scarecrow, where she dances and talks to them and imagines the projectionist's face, and then takes care of some things herself on the scarecrow. After some really weird like interaction where she's like yelling at them because she's like, I'm a married woman. She steals the scarecrow's hat, so she has this top hat now. She finds out there's a specific performance at a church down the road. Howard's sister, again from a well-off family, comes to visit and talks about it, and they're like, yay, sure, let's go try out. You see in these points that Pearl is abusive towards her dad in many ways, testing out whether or not he would react if she tried to choke him. Pearl's got some mixed feelings about her dad. Like, she loves him very much, and it's very clear that she loves her dad very much, but like, she's off. There are scenes where she's like bathing in front of him, and I'm kind of like, right, why are you doing that? That's real weird, Pearl. But Pearl's real weird. So Pearl is like doing her thing, trying to get out of this house. Mom ends up interfering, and Pearl shoves her, and she gets shoved into the fire, catches on fire. It's a big ordeal. Pearl goes to put her out with boiling water. Ow. So she, leaves, goes, sleeps with a projectionist, and ends up bringing him out there as well and killing him. It's a situation. It starts to just totally unfold. Pearl does what she does, and I think her dad's still alive. She ends up killing him later or something. So then there's the audition. Pearl leaves the mayhem at the farm, goes to the audition, and imagines herself as this amazing performer, doing this very elaborate dance that like couldn't have happened. But we don't know if that's really how she performs either. We don't know if she's actually that good, but a lot of the elements are imagined, not really happening. She ends up getting kicked out. They excuse her. She freaks out. She's not having it. She explodes. The sister-in-law comes out to the farm where she sits and talks to her, and there's this scene where it is unveiled that Pearl understands that there's something wrong with her, that things aren't okay. We learn a lot about her life in terms of not wanting to really be married. We learn that she didn't really want to be pregnant. She ended up having a miscarriage. She was actually like cool with that. We learn a lot of things about her in this, and that other people have been very worried about her for a long time. Pearl undoubtedly has some antisocial traits. To make a long story short, everybody ends up dead because Pearl kills them. And she decides in a delusional state that she is going to embrace her isolated life on the farm and fix everything. She lines up the dead bodies around the table and proceeds to set up dinner and ready herself. The movie ends with Howard walking in and being like, and Pearl being like, and freaking out and crying and going from happy to sad to up and down and all over the place. So her symptoms do closely align with BPD. Impulsive, dangerous behaviors, including like reckless sex, substance abuse, things like that. BPD is characterized by really unstable moods and very rapidly changing intensity of moods. There is a significant fear of abandonment with BPD.
What did I do wrong?
Nothing. Calm down.
No! Why are you leaving me? If I didn't do anything wrong, I don't understand. I thought you like me! You're not gonna leave me here. I'm not staying on this farm!
They're very unstable relationships, unclear or shifting self-image, which...
Truth is, I'm not really a good person. What is wrong with me? I'm not pretty, or naturally pleasant, or friendly.
A star.
Which would explain why Pearl kind of likes herself but doesn't sometimes. Impulsive self-destructive behavior, potential self-harm, don't see a lot of that. Extreme emotional swings, which Pearl acknowledges herself. Chronic feelings of emptiness and explosive anger. So on top of these things that I feel like she meets criteria for, antisocial behavior is tied into it. That's a different disorder. I don't think that she's like full-blown ASPD or psychopath. I think that she has these traits that are tied into the BPD. Sometimes people with BPD are able to do what's called splitting, where they're able to just shut off how they feel about somebody and shut off those emotions based on a very intense emotional mood swing. So they can just go from like loving somebody, they're the greatest person in the world, to hating them very rapidly. While I was looking up things about this movie, I did find a noteworthy discussion about autism. So I've included a link to the article down in my description below because I think it's interesting. So we looked at some of the BPD criteria that Pearl meets. Let's look at some of the autism criteria that are mentioned in this. I will say that I am not qualified to diagnose autism. I do not have additional training to be able to do that, but I do work with a lot of people with autism and am familiar with some of the different presentations. Can diagnose borderline personality disorder though. Another thing I want to note is that I have seen people misdiagnosed with borderline personality disorder that actually have autism and substantial trauma. Trauma does some weird stuff. It also contributes to borderline personality disorder. So in this article that I'm reading, the person is an autistic person and is talking about some of the things that they see that may be autistic in nature, mentioning that Pearl outright stated to not understand some social cues. She has a pretty specialized interest in music and dancing. The person was talking about the use of face masks and how that may compare to masking. Masking is a practice that a lot of people with mental health disorders do, but especially neurodivergent people with neurodevelopmental disorders. Masking is kind of hiding your symptoms like you are wearing a mask. It is described as a survival strategy to avoid shame and embarrassment. Another argument that this person makes is that Pearl has these interactions with the farm animals where she says, y'all see me for who I am. So we're thinking in context, this reflects her ego and her delusional thoughts that she's going to be a future star. This person talks about how this may be related to the freedom that she feels to be herself because of their neutral faces. They don't react to her performances like a person would. Pearl states that she feels things very deeply, again, borderline trait, but also autistic people have meltdowns and feel things very intensely at periods of time as well. She could have some hypersensitivity to other people's reactions, being neurodivergent. Pearl says to her sister-in-law during that conversation, she said there's something missing that the rest of the world has. My argument is that in the part where Pearl says something is missing from her that the rest of the world has could also be part of the BPD because of chronic feelings of emptiness. And also she could be referring to some level of empathy. That doesn't mean that she doesn't have empathy. She kind of does, but she has some issues with her empathy. While there's some fair arguments made in that direction, I will say that there's not enough symptoms to really diagnose autism. I think it's interesting to look at it from that point of view. I do think that she leans more towards borderline personality disorder. Sometimes things aren't clear. Overall, I like both of these movies. I am excited about Maxine. I can't wait to see what happens. I think they were two completely different movies, but somehow I understood it. Flowed together. Poor Pearl. That's one thing about all of these is that you feel for each one of the characters, including Pearl. One thing I thought was interesting is that the actress who plays Maxine and Pearl, because it's the same actress, Mia Goth, that she was actually a big part of the directing of Pearl, which was neat. I liked it. So I think this movie's fascinating, going from Pearl's origin story to then figuring out Pearl as a future serial killer of all of these people filming a porno, meets her fate. I want to see what Maxine's up to. That's coming out this year. I want to thank Creature Cosmetics for their Terrifier palette, which has made my eyeshadow very blue. It's very nice. They're not sponsoring. I just like them. I want to thank my patrons from Patreon. Thank you all for being so cool. Thank all of you. I think it's super cool that you like anything that I make. Oh man, I can hear my mom now. You look like a clown. All right, that's all.